Welcome to the series Against All Odds, Crafting a Career in the Arts. According to Statistics Canada, around 19% of the population are living with some form of disability that affects their level of freedom, independence, or quality of life. Of that population, a percentage are invisibly disabled, which means they may look and act healthy but are living with a chronic condition. Having an invisible disability could happen to anyone at any time and can include autoimmune diseases, brain injuries and strokes, chronic pain, mental or psychological disorders, among others.
People with invisible disabilities may not be able to work a full-time schedule or may need a modified schedule based on how they feel. But having an invisible disability doesn't mean living your dream is completely impossible. In this series, we will share with you stories of invisibly disabled professional craft artists who work or sell their art in Edmonton. We have also included valuable community resources that are important for any artist who wants to begin their career. I'm Amy, an award-winning artist and filmmaker who is invisibly disabled. And together with my husband Tanner, I will be sharing the stories of local artists with invisible disabilities.
And I will take you to different places in the community to show you where support is available.
It is our hope that with this series, anyone looking to begin their art career will know where the supports and resources exist in our community. We also hope, if you are invisibly disabled, the stories of the artists included in this series will help you see how it is possible to have a career in the arts, or inspire you to explore the artistic medium you have been curious about.
My name is Shaun Semple, and we are located just outside of Edmonton, Alberta. I am an artisan blacksmith. I work with iron and steel, and I make everything from decorative pieces for your home to tools to knives and axes and pretty much everything in between. We're born around here. I was born in Ardrossan. We haven't moved very far in my 53 years. I had a standard, pre-video game childhood, 2 channels on TV and spent most of our time outside. I was relatively creative back then. Used to get together with my friends and we would do, arts and crafts and all of that sort of fun stuff. And kind of kept up with that all through my adulthood. As a country boy, generally, yes. A lot of the things that I like to make are outdoorsy type of things, the axes and the knives. When you grow up out in the sticks, as we used to call it, everybody had a knife and everybody, had tools. One of the things I love about blacksmithing is I get to make all of those tools that I wanted to have when I was a kid, but we couldn't get them. My inspirations for everything that I make are generally from just things that I see in my head, or I'll see something in nature, or just something out in public, and it's really fulfilling to see something and then go, okay, I see that in my head, and then to fire up the forge and hammer on steel and be able to create something inspired by something I've seen in nature is really nice. We sell our work mostly in person through shows, which is our favorite way to do it. We do sell online, and I've shipped pieces all over the world. But there's something special about selling to a person where they can pick up and feel the piece, and you get to see their reactions to it. And that's where we prefer to do it, but we sell in a lot of different avenues, but I really prefer to be there in person to talk to the customer. We also have pieces in a couple of different places where they're on display. One of them is the Alberta Craft Council. We enjoy having our pieces displayed there as well. I say we a lot when I'm talking about our business because I make everything, but I wouldn't have a successful business without my wife. So it is the royal we, and whenever I say we, I'm speaking of us. She's, I'm front of house and she's back end. That's how we generally do it. Because I spend hours out here every day making and creating stuff, and then she has to take the pictures and, write up the synopsis and, everything else. I'm not a very good photographer, but she is. So between us, we can run social media, we can run, packaging and shipping and doing all the shows. It's a two-person at least job. Running a successful business, it's a job, but a job that has many hats that you would have to wear. We have to do the creation of all of the things. We have to do the marketing. We have to do photography. In this day and age, you must have social media. We have to do the in-persons at the shows. Some of these shows are 12 or 14 hours long. So that's a lot for one person to do. So everything that we do, my wife and I do together. It's more of a case of over time, you get to experiment a lot. I've been at this for 7 years now, full time. As my skills progress, I'm able to take more of the things I see in my head and actually make them into what, people want to buy. Over the years, we've broadened our catalog of things that we make, but a lot of the things also that were an experiment or a one-of-a-kind, once they sell, I don't make them anymore. They're an art piece that is just created once and then it's in the world. So about 20 years ago, I was in a car accident. I was sitting at a red light and I woke up in the backseat of my car. I was rear-ended at about 80 kilometers an hour, and over the course of the next year, the doctors told me that I was about 15% disabled and that I had problems with neck, jaw, and with my spine. At the time, I didn't really think that there would be a lot of changes I'd have to make to my life, or that, being disabled was going to change much, but it did. And over time, I had to modify the way that I worked, modify the way that I did, anything with the family and the kids. A lot of the physical activities that I really enjoyed doing before now became either not possible or more difficult. So for a few years, it was hard. But as I was getting older, I realized that I could either not do things and be 15% disabled, or I would just pretend that I wasn't, modify how I did things, and just continue doing what I wanted to do and living my life. Back of why it happened, a few years of, well, this blows, and then nowadays, I go see my doctors regularly, I do my exercises and my yoga, and there are some things I can't do, but I generally go and do what I want, and if I have to modify the way it's done, that's what I do. Since I work for myself and everything I do here is for me, if I'm having a bad back day, okay, I'll go grind knives, right? Or everything hurts today, so I will go and do paperwork, or I will go and do social media. There are so many different things to do that, on a day when everything hurts, you can always find something to do that doesn't hurt. And then the next day you get back out and pick up a hammer and keep going. When I started blacksmithing, I was employed in, the corporate world like a lot of people are, and I started it as a hobby because I wanted, that connection to history. Everybody's seen those old fantasy movies and everything else with the blacksmith making the swords and all that other fun stuff that you see. And I'm like, well, we can do that. So I went to Nate and I took a weekend course. And by the second day, when, the blisters on your hand are, ripping open and you're wrapping them with hockey tape and just continuing on, by the end of that weekend course, I knew that that's what I was going to be. And that was 7 years ago, and I haven't looked back. I've been at it every day since. As of yet, there's been nothing that I've wanted to make that, through some modifications of the way I do things, that I haven't been able to. Well, as a blacksmith, my favorite medium is, of course, steel and iron. Wrought irons, steels, any of the traditional blacksmithing steels. I like to use recycled steels for a lot of my blades. I call them storied blades. So all of my knives and axes and, sharp and pokey things, they're all formed from recycled steels from all over Alberta, like 1968 Camaro leaf springs, for example. Farrier's rasps, things like that. But in general, as a blacksmith, everything is made out of metal. One of my favorite things about being a blacksmith is the ability to take a piece of steel, heat it up to 2,000 degrees, and hit it with a hammer and have it move like Play-Doh. Being able to take something that we see as rigid and structural and being able to turn it into something flowing and organic just by using these ancient tools is really quite cool. My favorite part as a blacksmith, and most of the blacksmiths I've talked to, everybody's favorite part is the actual forging, like the heating of the steel and the heating with the hammer. After that, the finishing is a lot of, grinding, polishing, buffing, that sort of thing. It's all part of the job, but every blacksmith's favorite part is the actual hammering of the steel on the anvil. My favorite time of day for blacksmithing is usually fairly early in the morning before the heat of the day sets in. Worst possible time is late at night, when all the neighbors are home, and hammering would generally attract a lot of attention. I never hammer past 5 o'clock. Everybody starts coming home, so I will grind, I will buff, I will everything else. No power hammer, no hammering after 5 or 6. Probably the most therapeutic part about being a blacksmith is hammering on things. That's why a lot of people get into blacksmithing. It's a great way to release stress and tension in your life by taking a hammer and hitting things with it really hard. My disability hasn't really changed the way that I have to promote my business. The fact that I can't work as much as somebody who doesn't have a disability does means that I can't make as many things as somebody who didn't does. Also, at these shows, going and being on your feet for 12, 14 hours a day for 4 or 5 days straight, that is harder on me than actually standing here working on the anvil. So it's a little more difficult to make as much as I could, and it's also a little more difficult to go to as many shows and sell as much as we could. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there. There's a couple of ways that it impacts, but we work around it. There's actually a great deal of support when we're running a business like this. My wife, of course, she takes care of a lot of the back end stuff. I couldn't do what I do without her. Also, there's a community of blacksmiths. Yes, there are a few of us still around, and I mean, I go and I train with other blacksmiths, and we get together, compare ideas, things like that. So there are show organizers that we owe a great deal to, that we've been with for years and years, and some of our first shows, we've been going to the same shows for 7 years now. So without them, we never would have even got off the ground. Art definitely has made my life better. There's no question about it. The ability to, have ideas, or, get inspiration from something you see or something you hear, and being able to go and create it and show other people what you see in your head it's really, a life changer. I've always, been interested in art, but up until adulthood, farm boys didn't do that sort of thing. But, it's a new time, and you can go and create anything you want. I define success as an artist if I can create what I want to create and have people appreciate it. Even at shows, there are a ton of people that, can't afford or don't buy my work, but just having them appreciate it, to me, that makes me a successful artist, whether I sell anything or not. What I would say to somebody who had a similar accident or something like that to me, and the doctors said, you're now 15% disabled or whatever, and you really wanted to be a blacksmith, you really wanted to be an artist, you really wanted to do pretty much anything, I would just tell them, do it. Can I do absolutely everything that a 25-year-old strapping, hulking man could do? No. But can I do it? Yes. Do I have to change things a bit? Yes. But at the end of the day, I'm going to make something that is just as good as they can make. And if you want to paint, if you want to sculpt, if you want to blacksmith, if you want to carve, it can be done. There's no reason not to try. You may think there's reasons not to try, and you may be able to come up with some, but if you want to try something, just try it. If a doctor told me that in 5 years I'm not going to be able to blacksmith anymore, well, then I'm going to blacksmith for 5 more years. It's just the person you are. I just like to think that there's nothing that somebody with a disability can do and somebody without a disability can do. They're both going to be able to create the same thing. Sure, it may take them a little longer, or when I'm making something, I have to work around some days when I have a bad back day or something like that, but at the end of the project, it's going to be just as good.